Welcome to Alouettes Flightdeck, podcast dedicated to Montreal Alouettes football. I am Tim Capper. You can find me on Twitter at Repact. That's REPPACT.
And I'm Cliffy D. You can also find me on Twitter at Cliffy D. And this episode of the Alouettes Flightdeck podcast is presented by our good friends over at SportBuff, where right now, if you use the promo code FlightDeck-10, you can save 10% off your entire order. Head on over to www.sportbuffshop.com.
It's game week.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Can't wait. We're less than 20, as taping this, we are less than 24 hours from game to kickoff. I guess we can let them know that their hashtag is taken by somebody else's.
Oops.
Whoops. But I can't wait, dude. So far, I'm liking all the different promos and stuff that the league is doing. Same thing with the Owls and stuff like that. I've seen a couple of RDS advertisements around the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. There's a good feeling in the air. Like I think, all things considered, I think people are generally excited about Canadian football and the Alouettes again, which is great for us because this being in Montreal Alouettes podcast, you kind of want people to be excited about the product. So
who would have thought?
They are.
But yeah, kickoff coming up. Can't wait. If you didn't catch our previous show talking about the last preseason game, go ahead and back and check in our archives over at alouettesflightdeck.ca and catch up. But this episode was leading us into this game versus the Calgary Stampeders, and a team, a team that the Alouettes have played before, Cliff, to start off their season. This would be the fifth time in team history that the team has actually had their season opener at Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
Last time was back in 2014.
That's right.
And so far, so good, dude. We're 2-2 in those games. So
that's right. And let's not forget, 2009, the Alouettes opened the season out in Calgary. And if I recall, that year ended up turning out okay for the Alouettes.
I think so. I think so.
I think they did all right.
Yep. And 2003, too, is also the last time that it was game number one. Not only was it the season opener for the Alouettes, it was the season opener for the CFL.
That's pretty cool. I mean, they do say put your best foot forward. So I guess the league, for whatever reason, considers the Alouettes and the Stampeders to be the league's best feet to put forward. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I was wondering where you're going with that. I know you tripped on your feet there for a second there, Cliff. It's okay. Don't worry about it. But I knew what you were trying to say.
I promise there's no foot fetish here, folks. I ain't about that life. If you are, that's cool, but just...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure. It's your own thing.
You do you, as they say.
By the way, I'm going to give a plug right now. If you're listening to this on Thursday, Cliff and I are going to be a part of the pregame show for the Mark Cast. Is it a podcast? It's a video podcast. Mm-hmm. Check it out on socials. Look up for Mark Cast, and it's going to be on. We're going to be on the YouTubes. So join us there, and we're going to be part of the pregame show leading up to the game. It starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So we'll be on there sometime during that. We don't know what the schedule is yet, but still catch us there. You'll actually be able to see our noggins if you don't happen to know what we already look like.
Yeah, pretty excited to be on the Markcast. It'll be my debut on there. You were there on there last year, so that's pretty cool.
Yes.
That you'll be back in the saddle, so that's
right.
That's excellent. So I'm looking forward to the both of us offering our perspectives on what we can expect as we see the Alouettes and Stampeders play. So I'm excited, and folks, by all means, if you have the chance to do so before the game, it's kind of a pregame, if you will. Make sure you tune into the Markcast and check out what the Flight Deck folk have to say.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, let's talk about the upcoming season. I mean, we had and we're going to talk about it obviously more when we're previewing the upcoming game versus the Stamps. But the depth charts came out, and it is something that has been talked about quite a bit, and it's actually very interesting to see it actually in print, Cliff.
Mm-hmm.
Is that all this talk, and I know there was talk earlier today, if anybody listened to Joey Alfieri and his chat with Alouettes general manager Danny Machocha, they're talking about why the cuts were made and certain choices were made, and it was brought up a couple of times where it is a known fact that they want to start 2 Canadians at wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, that's what they've done. And yes, I understand it's more of a game thing, but it still needs to, bear repeating. The Owls are going to have. I mean, looking at the depth chart right now, 2 sets of two wide receivers listed here, and both of them have the primary and the secondary wide receivers, and they're all Canadian.
Yep.
Yes, it's the Canadian Football League. Yes, from what Danny Machocha said, this is one of the reasons why they made the hard choices that they did when it came to who they were going to keep and who they were going to cut. What's your thought on this, Cliff? I mean, yes, it's not it's just not the spotlight that's going to be happening in BC with Nathan Rourke. But still, this is 2 sets of Canadian wide receivers starting for the Owls.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, especially when you consider, for years, the Alouettes have been like a national receiver graveyard. Like, they would draft all these extremely talented, or at least I thought extremely talented wide receivers in the draft and do absolutely nothing with them or nothing of note. And I couldn't understand, were these guys just not testing right? Was it just a matter of just not seeing a fit in the offense? What was going on? Why couldn't the national receiver get any love? I mean, yes, this team has always prided itself on having some pretty outstanding wide receivers, all American. But you got to find some way, shape, or form. You got to be able to give some love to the national receiver, and it just has never happened in Montreal. But this year, it's pretty clear that Danny Machocha sees the value in national receivers. He knows what he has already in Kion Julian Grant. And then you go out and you get a Hergy Mayala, and you go out and draft. You make moves in order to draft a Tyson Philpott.
Yeah.
This is just dangerous. These are some extremely talented national receivers. Never mind, they are talented receivers in their own right, regardless of where they were born. But this just amplifies that, these are some homegrown talents, if you will. These are guys that are of Canadian descent, and they're a very key part of the offense. I mean, VA is going to be looking for these guys going downfield. These are guys that can turn on the jets and make plays happen. All of them, really. When you think about it, all of these national receivers are extremely talented, have great hands, and can make plays happen. I mean, yes, everybody's going to be focusing on Eugene Lewis and Jake Wienecke, of course. That's your bread and butter right there when it comes to offense, when it comes to the receiver position. But my God, do not sleep on guys like Kion Julian Grant and Hergy Mayala. They will burn you. So I'm really excited. It's still hard for me to wrap my head around that we're at this point right now. And yes, it definitely does explain why certain players were not kept as part of the roster. But I mean, it's incredible to think that the Alouettes are in this position after so many years of focusing their talents nationally on other positions, that now you can actually truly put together a decent, I won't say murderer's row necessarily of national talent, but you've got some horses here that can definitely make plays happen. And that's going to be key. This is what's going to help the Alouettes offense really take shape this year.
Yeah. And also, we were talking about Philpott before. It's also nice to see on the other side of the ball, Cliff, that Tyler Richards is secondary this week as middle linebackers. Okay, and I guess we could say his fumble partner Gowanlock, he's also a secondary this week behind Ellis. So
yeah,
these guys looked, considering what Richards did versus Ottawa in the preseason game, these guys are looking to make a name for themselves immediately right out of the box.
Yeah, like I look at that wide side and it's just, my goodness. I mean, all the Canadian talent that's there. You got Richards, you got Brian Herlemana, Chris Aki, who we already know is absolutely dangerous. Mm-hmm. And then you got Gowanlock, who, as far as I was concerned, like last week's game versus Ottawa was his coming out party. Like people didn't know that this guy was there, but guess what? He's here and he's going to make a lot of noise. Like I look at him and the fact that he's not a starting member of the defensive line, that's cool. Neither was David Menard last year. And look at what he did.
Exactly. Very good point. I mean, okay,
Gowanlock's not French, but I mean, he's still a Canadian. He's still a force and someone that, given the right opportunity, is going to make a lot of noise this year. I mean, this is. I look at this. I look at this defense, like the Canadian content that's on there, and like, holy cow, there's a lot to be excited about.
No, I agree. Greg Reed is back. He's been having he was hurt, a little bit banged up, but he is going to be starting for the defense. Mike Jones, our free agent pickup, he's going to be the number one at cornerback. And we have to at least say this. I mean, yes, it's game one. But if you were to look at all the positions currently on offense and defense, Cliff, if there was one position in particular where you thought that there might be a little bit of concern, and I understand this is only game one, what position would you say are you, as an Owls fan, hoping that the Owls can shore up a little bit better? I mean, we've heard some rumors. I'm not trying to lead you into anything, but I'm curious to know what you're going to say to that question.
On first glance, it may not be considered a legit concern based on certain people, but I look at the left tackle position. Chris Schluger, who, when he's healthy, is absolutely a fantastic player. Problem is, he has not been able to stay healthy the past couple of years. And I was worried, like when the Alouettes traded Tony Washington to the Elks, I'm like, oh, that is a huge hole to fill. And unless they got a really good plan, like unless they're targeting somebody in free agency to fill that hole, I mean, you can't just replace a Tony Washington so easily. And like I said, with Chris Schluger, yes, he's played that position before and had success when he's healthy.
Yeah.
But like I said, he has had problems staying healthy. And who's his backup? Don't know. I mean, like, listen, left tackle. I mean, you're protecting Vernon Adams' blind side. Like, that's not that's no small feat. I mean, that's not something you want to hand over to a wet behind the ears rookie. I'm not saying Schluger is, but with his limited playing time, like, kind of feels like, okay, is he going to be up to the task? So right away, that's my number one concern. Listen, I want to be proven wrong. I really hope, like maybe all he's just needed is an opportunity. Maybe it's just been bad luck when it comes to his injury woes. And if he's healthy and ready to go and ready to do the work that's necessary and keeping our quarterback upright and mobile, then great. No, then my worries are taken care of. But as it stands right now, like, to me, that's, I won't say a weak spot, but it is something as a supporter of this team I am concerned about, because let's face it, we do not want any of our quarterbacks to be kissing the carpet.
No.
We want them upright. We want them throwing the ball or handing off the ball or running away with the ball. We don't want them getting railed by a defensive lineman or anyone else on the opposing defense, all because the defensive line just decides to let the defender come in and attack the quarterback. So, like I said, as of right now, I'm looking at Chris Schluger. I'm hoping the best for him. I'm hoping that he is healthy, ready to go, ready to work, and will do whatever it takes to make sure that his quarterback stays upright.
Yeah, and it's not really a concern to me. I want to see how well Stanback is doing, but I'm looking at the running back position myself. Obviously the last game for Joshua Entwistle, how he had we got to admit, he had a horrible game. He knows. We want to make. I know he's going to be chomping at the bit to get to back. To at least carry a couple of balls this week. when Stanback's on the sideline. Do you? I don't necessarily say it's a weak point, but maybe we need to have potentially a third. I mean, there's been a talk, I think, all week that the Alouettes are looking to make an improvement potentially at running back for a backup, whether it be Cameron Ayers-Payne. We don't know what's happening with there, but we want to make sure Stanback is healthy. I mean, I think he had an ankle injury, and both you and I know that when it comes to ankles and being a running back, you really need to be 100%. And let's hope. I mean, this is week 1, and he's having a potential ankle injury already or issue. I'm a little concerned, but I still have faith so far in our running team. So I'm okay with that. Second,
and I think Antwi, just to elaborate on that, I think Antwi, just the way from what we saw of him in camp when we were in Trois-Rivières and what we saw in the preseason game.
Yeah.
I mean, he runs with a purpose. I think he realized like his first real opportunity under the bright lights didn't go quite as planned for him. And I think he kind of kept that with him. I'm pretty sure it sat and gnawed at him throughout the offseason. And I'm pretty sure he was like, okay, that's not me. That's not what I want people to remember me by. And I think he played like that in training camp. I think he had that sort of fire in him that's like, I am better than what people think of me. And I think it showed in a lot of his work. I think the fact that he is basically the number 2 back right now speaks volumes to the confidence that this team has in him. So I'm really excited to see what he can do. Like William Stanback, we know exactly what he is. Yeah. We know what he's capable of.
Yeah.
This injury, this ankle injury is a concern for sure. But I think if he wasn't 100%, he wouldn't go. I think he knows his body. He knows his limitations. He knows what he's capable of. But if he does actually have to step aside and let Antwi in on the action, they'll be fine. I think it'd be more than fine, to tell you the truth.
And I'm going to say this now. I don't know if I'm going to eat my words or not, but it was before I watched, or I think it was just within a couple of minutes of the quick mini doc that they did on Stanback today. The Alouettes did. And a number popped into my head. Do you want to know what that? Do you want to know what that number was?
2,000?
No. Well, I meant versus Calgary.
Oh, versus Calgary. Okay.
I don't want to be held that much into potentially eating crow. It would be nice, but with all honesty, the number that came to mind, because it was on mute and I didn't hear a thing. The number 200 came to mind.
Yeah. Yep.
I'll leave it at that. By the way, are you surprised Simmons is backing up Nick Usher? I mean, we just picked him back up, obviously, in a strange twist of fate. No,
not surprised at all. I mean, again, these guys have to get rotated in, and I think you'll see a lot of movement with the additions of Mike.
Usher is Usher is an American, so I mean, it's.
So is Simmons.
Yeah. Wow, they didn't even mark him as such. Did you know that?
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, they didn't mark him as such. That's interesting.
No, but let's not forget, with the additions of Mike Moore and Avery Ellis on the defensive line, I mean, like these are some very solid, very strong players in their own right. So obviously Simmons is going to have to, bide his time a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I think if these guys get rotated in a fair bit, and I got a feeling that you're going to see a lot of that. I think defensive line coach Greg Quick, he loves guys like this. Like these are the kind of guys that fit very well in his system and his coaching style. And I wouldn't be surprised to see all 4 of these guys get moved around, filling in spots. I think the only thing you're going to see that's guaranteed is Usher and Sewell in their spots. Mm-hmm. But the other 2 spots, I can see a lot of movement, a lot of moving parts here. Guys just giving different looks to the offense. And I think the key is going to be like what combination is going to work best and what's going to keep working against a team like Calgary in order to keep Bo Levi Mitchell honest and getting him out of his rhythm.
Yeah. Makes you wonder who would be starting who would be the number 2 to Nick Usher if they hadn't picked up Simmons. It's a what if question, obviously, but I mean,
it's a huge what if, especially too when you factor in like this time last year, Simmons was actually the starter on the defensive line. He was actually where Avery Ellis is now. So It's really interesting. It's really interesting. And just to know that we have this kind of talent on the defensive line, which for years has been a concern, especially of Danny Machocha when he took over this job. He did say the defensive line was something he wanted to be retooled and completely reworked. And he did that. I mean, he brought in a lot of talent, whether it's through free agency or other moves. I mean, the trade, like the Tony Washington trade, it was the reason why Mike Moore is here.
Yep.
We got some free agent add-ons with Avery Ellis and another trade with Antonio Simmons back again. I mean, it's clear like, his focus was to make this defensive line, a lot better. And just looking at it, it looks dangerous. It looks really dangerous. Like I don't see any weak spots, to tell you the truth.
My last minor concern, because we really didn't see it. We didn't even see it, I don't think, I'm trying to remember if we saw it in preseason when we were up in Trois-Rivières and during the intra-squad. Who's going to be doing the second and third and short? And obviously, Dominic Davis is currently listed as our number 3. Are we going to go? Are the Owls going to go back to that route? Because remember, obviously, when they were 2 quarterbacks last year, that's not what was done. Mm-hmm. Are they going to go the route of what they did with the Tanner Marsh or the, all the many, many quarterbacks that they've used in the years past to do the second and third and shorts?
Yeah, for short yards back, I mean, it's very possible. I mean, like, this is why you would keep a Dominique Davis for situations like that, because let's be honest, Trevor Harris is not a short yardage quarterback. So, no. I guess we'll see. I think I didn't recall seeing a whole lot of that practiced in training camp, but
yeah, I know
it could just be one of those things. Like, maybe it's just not something that's so easy to practice on. It's just one of those things you just have to just be good at. So
yeah, watch it. Davis will pop. Watch this. He'll become the next 80 Mac, so to speak, where he'll do the third and shorts. As long as they're successful, that's all that matters.
That's what counts.
That's all that matters.
Then again, too, if you're in short yardage, maybe that's what you truly lean on a William Stanback or Joshua Antwi to somehow get those extra yards, which Stanback we know can do no problem, and even add on to it. So we'll see. It's not out of the realm of impossibility what you've suggested. So I'm really curious to see, like, just when it does get to like second and 2 or third and 1, like, who is the one who's going to hop in, or is VA just going to keep it himself and do all the work? Yeah. Which also a possibility, because once again, he's mobile. You know what he can do as well. It's gonna be fun. That's the only thing I can think of is like there's a lot to consider here when it comes to this Alouettes team.
Yep, and at least this time around, game one this year is actually game 1. It's not essentially a preseason game. Well,
some would argue that the first game of the regular season is still essentially a preseason game, but I digress.
Yeah. So, we've seen what the line's coming up for this game. We've seen the over-unders for wins. I think it's even money for the Alouettes, over-under at 8.5 wins, I think it was. It was over at Bet Regal. Mm-hmm. When you look at the Alouettes in the East, and I know you and I really am on the same bus as you are when it comes to thinking that there's a very good possibility of a first ever crossover from the East. I think the question for us is, where the Alouettes stack up? We've been known over the past 6 years, leading into our 7th season now, that we really don't say what the records of the Alouettes are going to be or what we'd be happy with. Obviously, we're the Alouettes fans. We want them to win. But we're trying to be fair here, too. Uh-huh. We're not going to say, they're going to go 18-0.
No, that's someone else's shtick, and we're not going to steal that.
No. So when you look at this team and so far what there is, and again, on paper, and we've talked about this before,
mm-hmm.
Going into the 2022 season, Cliff, what are your thoughts on how you think this team's going to do in the Eastern Division?
let's not forget, the Eastern Division is a lot different than it was last year. I mean, as we've said this on numerous other podcasts, and anytime that people have asked my thoughts on this, I've said the same thing. Ottawa has made so many wholesale changes. Like, they are not the same team that they were the past 2 seasons. Like night and day. Like, that's how different they are right now. Is that going to spell instant success? It's hard to say. I personally think it's going to take some time for them to gel and really become that team. I think they will be a very good team in the future. Will they be a very good team in 2022? Maybe, but I'm still not 100%. I mean, like I said, it does take time for a team like that to come together. You can't just throw a whole bunch of all-stars together and just expect it all just to work like magic.
Right.
So in that sense, I think Ottawa will be a better team than they were, without question, but will they be better than the Alouettes? I can't say 100% so. You take a look at Toronto. They've always managed to stay extremely competitive to the point where people are still asking, like, is there a different set of rules for them? Like, they've had so many people in free agency. They've made so many moves. They've signed so many contracts. Like, where are they getting the money for all this? Like, how does their salary management system work? But whatever they're doing does work, because they were on top of the Eastern Division last year, and they were one or two plays away from going to the Grey Cup. I mean, this is a team that you cannot sleep on in any sense. I think that they'll be extremely competitive, very dangerous as well. If everybody there stays healthy, I think this is a team that can definitely make a lot of noise. And Hamilton, they've been in the past 2 Grey Cups for a reason. They always find success. They always find a way to win. I think they've taken a lot of hits this year as far as team players leaving in free agency or retirement, or other moves have been made, and they too are not. They're not exactly the same team.
And actually settling on one quarterback.
Yeah, that's key as well. They've made their choice after having 2 quality quarterbacks at their disposal. Now they've got one bona fide starter, and as far as I'm concerned, a guy that can be a starter in this league. Now that they have Matthew Schultz on board. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing with Hamilton, kind of like Calgary. Everybody sleeps on them, or is predicting their doom every year, and yet they go out and they are either at the top of the division or very close to the top, and somehow manage to be extremely competitive. So honestly, you look at all 4 teams in the East. I mean, any one of them could be 1, any one of them could be 4th, or somewhere in between. And this is why I really think I would not be surprised at all when the Grey Cup playoffs get underway that all 4 Eastern teams are in it, which of course would mean one of those teams would have to cross over to the West. Which ones will? Like who will be where? I honestly can't tell you. I don't even want to begin to predict or assume or anything like that. But I really, truly would not be surprised this year, Tim, if all 4 teams do make the playoffs. I think it'd be great if Montreal ends up in first place, of course. I mean, that's our hope, as always, when it comes to this podcast.
I think if we get the 2019 Vernon Adams, it's a very good possibility.
Definitely. I think this team can have a winning season. I think they have the tools in place. I think the offense, once it gets going, once it gets clicking, is going to be very dangerous, like it was the first part of 2021. This defense, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely dangerous on all facets.
Right, but this is a defense, though, as we saw last year. We have to have an offense that equals the defense. We cannot let the defense. Yes, it was great they were able to do their job last year and keep us in games, but the offense this year has to do a hell of a lot more. They started off great. The Alouettes were tops in many, many, many of the offensive categories, but it faltered off after VA got hurt.
Yeah.
They've got to stay consistent and balance this thing so the defense doesn't get gassed.
No, absolutely. And that will kill any team. I don't care which team it is, but if your defense is out there much longer than what your offense is, it's not going to work. It's never been a recipe for success, and it never will be in the Canadian Football League. Mm-hmm. You've got to have a stout defense for sure, but you've also got to have a quarterback that can make plays happen, that can put points on the board, and not just field goals. I'm talking touchdowns, whether it's running, receiving, I don't care. Like, you got to have a quarterback that can score points in this league. That's really what it's about. The rules have been changed now to allow for more scoring, because supposedly that was a problem. Was supposedly teams were not scoring as much last year. I still don't think there was anything wrong with the game itself, but again, things evolve and change.
Preseason scores were a good sign, no matter how lopsided some of them were. The preseason scores were a pretty good sign, though.
That's the thing. There wasn't really a whole lot of lopsided games in the preseason this year.
Yeah, but total scores too, though. I mean, total points.
Right.
Yeah. So,
but again, it's going to be interesting to see how it works. But at the end of the day, you still need your quarterback to be able to score points. And if it's not going to be Vernon Adams, it better be Trevor Harris, because so much has been put behind him. So again, so many people believe in him. And I want to believe in him too. I know, again, the common theme is Cliffy hates his guts. And like, I don't hate his guts. What I hate is everybody making him out to be the next Ricky Ray. And he's not. I'm sorry to say, he's not the next Ricky Ray. I don't want him to be the next Ricky Ray either. I just want him to be a good, consistent quarterback. If he can do that and help this team win games, then I'm all for it. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm looking for more than anything else. But again, you need this team to win, regardless of who the quarterback is, whether it's Vernon Adams, Trevor Harris, Dominique Davis, or even Davis Alexander, if he manages to come in and pull off some of those heroics that he did in the preseason. At the end of the day, you want your quarterback to be part of the conversation. When it comes to the top tier quarterbacks in this league,
right?
VA should be, if he's not already, he should be in that conversation.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, I think this is what he has to do, and I think he knows it as well. He knows he has to bring the hype. He has to bring everything to every game. And from what we've seen of him so far, I think he can do that with no problem.
I would not be surprised if there are three, at least. I could see at least three Eastern teams being above 500 when the season ends. Will that fourth team be able to make the crossover with a 500 or less record? I don't. It's potential, but I don't know. The East is tough. I think Ottawa has to prove themselves, especially it's basically a giant change. You know, it's not an expansion club, but it is a brand new team in Ottawa. Hamilton needs to show why they've been the beast of the East for the past 2 years. Toronto has been up and down. They need to prove it themselves also. I think the Alouettes obviously have a lot of proof. You know, and
you're talking about four very hungry, very eager teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they all have their own reasons to want to be the best, to want to prove that they belong in the conversation. And I think that's just what that's gonna equal to is some really, really exciting football. And that to me is what I'm more excited about than anything else, is to see some good, hard-nosed, competitive football.
Yeah, I agree. Now, the big question here, I'm going to ask you this, Cliff. And yes, as I said, we don't do record predictions. But first, I'm going to ask you about what they said, what their the CFL plus minus the CFL regular season wins. Over or under 8.5 wins, or right on.
Well, I'll say just over. Like, I think 9 or even 10 is not that difficult to ask of this team, and I think that they could do it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
I mean, anything more than that is a bit of an ask.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah. How we're looking at it, yeah, I agree.
But I think 9-10 wins, I think, is a very reasonable request out of this team, and one that I truly do think that they can provide. And as you said, like, is a 9-9 record good enough to make the playoffs, or is it good enough to cross over? It just might be. I mean, this is what's going to make this so exciting, is that it's very possible too that everybody ends up improving.
And again, like last year, these 4 games versus Ottawa can make all the difference.
I think in a lot of ways it did make all of the difference.
Yeah. Like,
especially like as the Alouettes kind of tapered off towards the end. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, there was a couple of games that they should have had. I mean, like, you can even say that the early part of the season, like, this team was a lot better. Again, I always say you are what your record says you are, but at the same time, This team did not. They should have. There's a lot of games they should have won. They should have been much better than a 7-7 team, as far as I was concerned.
Yeah,
but that's just the way things worked. I mean, it just, as I said, they just kind of tapered off towards the end. We're running on fumes, really, when you think about it, and that's just how it was. But they cannot do that this year. They cannot afford to do that if they want to be competitive in this Eastern Division. This team has to at least be aiming for 9 to 10 wins, if not more.
Yeah, I agree. Now, big question. What place do you see them in? Because I'll go first. I think it's to me, the Tiger Cats are the team to beat until they're not, until somebody actually dethrones them. I still
to be the man, you have to beat the man.
I still think the Alouettes are going to be will be in the conversation for to host the Eastern Semi.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you for the most part. Like, I know, like, Toronto and Hamilton, those are basically 1A, 1B when it comes to the Eastern Division. Toronto, they were the top dogs last year. Hamilton, time and time again, as I said, you count them out and they find a way to win, and that's basically your competition right there. Again, Ottawa, as I said, will be better, but will they be better as in, like, first place better? I don't see it. Will they be second place better? I don't see it. Like, they are, I think, honestly, and it's not a put down by any stretch, so don't take it as such, they are a third place or a fourth place team in this division, because they will be better than they were last year.
Their first two games, they were going to be, I think, the gauge. I mean, they open up back-to-back weeks versus the defending two-time Grey Cup champion.
There you go. I mean, you want to be tested? That's a good way to be tested right there. But
yeah,
and again, if they go 0-2, nobody's going to be starting to hit panic button, I don't think, in Ottawa. But at the same time, that's where you start to assess your team. Like, you want to go up against the best. You want to prove yourself against the best. And if they can steal one or even two against Winnipeg, who, again, they still are the standard bearer as far as this league goes, as far as football teams are.
Right.
If you can steal at least one win from Winnipeg, then you're going to get people talking. Now you're going to people thinking, okay, we got something here in Ottawa. Let's see what's going to happen. But where do I see Montreal ending up when it's all said and done? I think second place is very reasonable. I think first place is attainable. Third place, more than likely. That's kind of where, again, it's not without the, I think if you're to really try to nail me down, which, again, I try not to be nailed down to these kind of things, but I think second or third place is about where I would expect to see the Alouettes. And no matter what, as I said, in this Eastern Division, it's going to be tough. Like, it'll be by, like, the slimmest of margins,
right,
like from number 1 all the way down to number 4 when it comes to ranking these Eastern teams. Like, it's going to be very slim. Like, I mean, these interdivisional games are going to be so crucial.
Yeah, especially now since there's more of an emphasis on them.
Mm-hmm.
Two less Western Division games. Since you brought it up, I'm going to at least ask you, before I was going to ask you the last question before we moved on into the previewing the matchup versus the Stampeders. But since you brought it up, there's been some talk recently from the talking heads. Potentially, when it, as you said, Ottawa starts off at 0-2. There's not much. There probably may not be much talk about it. People won't be worrying.
Right.
But we're being led to believe now. We've seen stories already. A 3 down put something. About on the same thing. Interesting comments were made, and that's why I brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
But what if the Alouettes start off 0-2? Or they get to, let's say, a 2-3, or whatever it may be, to start off the season. We've had people say that Kahari is on the hot seat. That does Danny Mac want to do a gym pop? Does he want to become the head coach in an interim position? By the way, if anybody remembers how well that's gone for Jim, or any general manager for the Alouettes recently who's become the head coach, the records have not been very good. Anyways.
No.
What? But your thoughts on that? I mean, I said Justin Duncan said some stuff. It's very interesting what he said, but I at least wanted to ask your opinion on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is something that's been kind of mulled about for quite some time now, is this idea that Kahari Jones is on the hot seat. I mean, let's not forget, it was like 3 years ago that he was basically thrown into the head coaching position with the dismissal of Mike Sherman. And lo and behold, the Alouettes end up going 10-8 in 2019, and all of a sudden Kahari is the darling because of his the fact that players are wanting to play for him. They're ready to run through a wall for him. His post-game speeches are just, things of magic. I mean, there was a lot to love about the Kahari Jones of 2019. I mean, like, as far as, like, that was the coach. Like, that was our coach, and we were ready to go to war for him. Like, that was the general consensus. 2021, still Kahari's coach, and as again, things were going great when the team was winning and the chemistry was there. Everything was going great, but then once VA got hurt, and then all of a sudden the offense kind of sputtered, and trying to replace VA was next to impossible. And there was a lot of times where I felt like Kahari was kind of coaching scared, like he was very conservative with a lot of his play calling. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again:
Too many penalties.
Yeah, but scared money don't make money, as they say. And if you're coaching scared, then it doesn't augur well for you. So when I take a look at what Kahari Jones is to this football team, like, he still very much is the heart and soul of this team, and I still see a lot of the players are very much on board with him. That is their coach for sure. This notion that he's on the hot seat and he's got to be able to produce wins right away, and it basically sounds like he's got to go 18-0 in order to keep his job, which is ludicrous. As is the thought that if this team goes 0-4, then he's out the door. I mean, I just don't. To me, that would be throwing away the baby with the bathwater, because we know what kind of a coach he is. We know that you give him the right tools, you give him the right opportunities, he's going to produce for you. Like, this is I look at some of the moves, like the personnel moves that have been made, and yeah, I can see why there's a lot of potential thought that maybe Danny Machocha wants to get back into coaching as well. I mean, let's face it. I mean, he was a very successful coach for the Carabins. Went to 3 Vanier Cups while he was coach. You look at the coaching staff that's there now, you've got a lot of former Carabins there, like Anthony Calvillo, Byron Archambault, David Deschamps. I mean, like, yeah, one would have to wonder. Like, and let's not forget to beyond everything else, Kahari Jones was in place when Danny Machocha was hired.
Right.
This is not, Kahari is not Danny's guy, so to speak. So, I mean, the first opportunity he has, like, would he bring in his own guy, or would he take over the coaching reins himself? I would say, honestly, like, I've been overall impressed with what Danny Machocha has done as a general manager. That doesn't mean I'd be so impressed with him being head coach and general manager. I mean, very few people can pull that off. And let's not forget, he's done that in the past, Danny Machocha. Didn't work out so well for him in Edmonton. I think you're better off at this point in the game, pick something and stick with it. Like, as far as I'm concerned, he's done a heck of a job as a general manager for this team. I would much rather, if he's going to get rid of Kahari, which I think would not be the best move, if he's going to get rid of Kahari, he cannot take over as coach. History has proven it to be disastrous for the most part, or not so successful when the general manager of the Alouettes takes over as head coach, whether it's Jim Pop, Kavis Reed.
Yeah.
I just don't see Danny Mac being the guy that's going to all of a sudden buck that trend. Now, if he's got somebody in mind that he wants to bring in as coach, that's a different story. But a lot of the idea is that, okay, is he secretly putting the band back together, the one that made him so successful at the UDM? One can help but wonder when you take a look at the coaching staff and just wonder, like, okay, if it's not Danny as head coach, then could he bring in someone else that was also a former Carabin? Maybe. It's certainly possible. But as it stands right now, again, I get why people would think that Kahari's on the hot seat, but I think you just got to let him do his thing. I mean, he's got a healthy Vernon Adams back. He's got so many weapons at his disposal. I mean, there's a lot to like about this Alouettes team as it sits. I think it's just a matter of, just let Kahari do his thing. And I will say, that during the 2019 season, there was so much doubt. There was so much doubt about the Alouettes. You know, people were expecting it to still be the dumpster fire and all the doom and gloom that was surrounding the team. And you know what? You know who's the best at shutting all that out? Was Kahari Jones and Vernon Adams Jr. They just blocked all that noise out. Like, you could tell them all these things. They were hearing none of it. They just went to work and they won football games. So if nothing else, I don't think this will serve as motivation, because I really want to believe that Kahari and Vernon are going to do the exact same thing in 2022. They're just going to shut out all that noise, all that talk, all that blah, 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 and just focus on what they know how to do. And that's just put together exciting football and finding ways to win. Like, we saw a little bit of that cardiac kids action in the preseason game.
Damn straight.
This is with a team that was composed mostly of, like, you know, 3s and 4s. And they still managed to pull it off. They still had that. You still had that Kahari DNA in that game, like that come from behind. You know, it ain't over till it's over kind of mentality. And I really do believe that Kahari and VA are going to bring that this year. And this team has a lot of potential. And I think if you just, you know, if these guys can just tune out all the noise, tune out all the negative vibes, everything that's trying to come in, just control what you can control and focus on the task at hand, which is winning football games. If they can do that, the results are going to come. Yeah. And I think that's, you know, like I said, it makes for interesting press. It makes for great talking points on, you know, podcasts and shit like that. But at the end of the day, I'm not overly concerned about Kahari. I think he knows what he has to do. He knows the pressure's on, and I think in a crazy kind of way, I think he might even be welcoming a little bit of that. Like, I think he wants nothing more than be able to prove all the doubters, all the haters, everybody wrong, just like he did in 2019.
Yeah,
I fully expect Kahari Jones to come in, show up, do his job, and produce winning football.
Yep,
that's all there is to it.
And my thought is, VA, if you have to, you know, if this was the case in 2019, if you have to stay off of social media, stay off of social media.
You got to do what you got to do, man. Like, that's really what it came down to. Because let's not forget, Vernon plays well when he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder. When people are starting to doubt him, when all of a sudden he's considered a second-class citizen, that's when he rises up, and that's when he just goes. Like, again, same idea, locked in, laser focus, goes to work. Same thing with Kahari. Just that's why that dynamic works so well with his team.
Yep.
And I think we'll see a lot of that in 2022. And again, just look at the weapons this team has. On offense and on defense,
and on the practice roster.
Yeah, I mean, my goodness. I mean,
and the guys who are currently on the one game.
Right. There is a lot of talent on this football team. That is undeniable. This is a team that can and will hang with just about anybody in this league. And if you want to sleep on the Alouettes, go ahead and sleep on them. I mean, y'all slept on them in 2019, and look what happened. 2021, as I said, the first part of the season, the first half, this was a team that they were in it. They were competitive. At one point, they even were the top team in the CFL East.
Yep.
You know, it's just, like I said, unfortunately, injuries will kill the best teams. Fine. But every team goes through injuries. Every team suffers a little bit of, you know, tragedy when it comes to things like that. So, I mean, the Alouettes are no different in that sense. But
and penalties, I think penalties too. Obviously, penalties in 2022 will be a huge marker for the Alouettes, because we saw what happened last year, and so far from what we saw with the, you know, with especially with the big change with the no yards penalty, they did pretty good, and I think a lot of it last year was on special teams. But we'll again, it's on paper at the moment. We'll see what happens. Now, Cliff, last question before we talk about the game this week. Looking at the current roster, your player to watch in 2022.
Boy. I mean, your first instinct would be to say VA because of him being like the comeback player of the year even. But, wow. I mean,
well, let me ask you this. Before you answer, do you think based on how many Owls were in the top 50 players kind of was disrespectful?
Not at all. No, the fact that Gino and Stanback, they're more or less where I expected them to be.
Yeah,
and I think the fact that I think the fact that the rest of the league is now finally woken up and realized, hey, wow, these are some good players right here. These are some superstars.
Yeah. Since you're not your humming and hawing, but for me, I'm gonna go with Stanback, and I'm really wanting to see it. It's just one game, but I want to see what Tyrell Richards can do. So those are my two guys on the Alouettes roster to watch.
All right.
And you don't want to pick offense and defense, but I just wanted to. Those are the two that came to mind.
Mm-hmm. All right. Then I am going to go with Reggie White Jr., who we saw starting to make a lot of noise last season, and I don't think that's going to change.
Thank you, COVID practice roster.
Yes,
that sounds so strange to be thanking. Anyways, you know what I'm getting at.
100%. So offensively, I think Reggie White Jr. is going to develop that connection with VA or whomever he's playing, whoever's under center. He's going to make those plays happen. Like I think we got a taste of what he can do last year. And I think it's just going to go like he's just trending upward. So I think that Reggie White Jr. is going to make even more of a name for himself in 2022. And defensively, I mean, my gosh, there's definitely a lot to like. But I think Brock Gowanlock, as I said, could be the next David Menard when it comes to like not a starter, but doesn't matter because when he gets in there, he's going to make plays happen. Like I said last week. He showed up in a big way, like literally out of nowhere, and took command. Like he made every play count, and I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised this year if he does that. And you see the dangerous weapons that are on that defensive line.
Yeah,
it was kind of like last year. Like Menard couldn't crack the starting lineup. I think he started one game out of 14.
Yeah.
And he still ended up as the nod for most outstanding defensive player.
Exactly.
I mean that's just because that's what he was. He was outstanding. He made the most of every opportunity, and I think Brock Gowanlock has definitely the potential to follow in those footsteps.
Yep. We are on social media. If you want to find any of the archives, besides heading over to our webpage at www.alouettesflightdeck.ca, we're on most of the podcast aggregates. So just do a general search for Alouettes Flight Deck, and I'm sure you will find us there, especially on a lot of the big name podcast apps. Twitter, we're at Alouettes FL Deck. Instagram, we are at Alouettes Flight Deck. Facebook, Alouettes Flight Deck Pod. YouTube, we're almost there. We're getting closer and closer to getting to that 100. Do a general search on YouTube for the Alouettes Flight Deck, and you will find us there. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Get us to 100 people. And you have a couple more weeks before the actual home opener on the 23rd. If you want to rep the podcast at the opener, head over to teespring.com/stores/Al's Flight Deck. And also another reminder, the week prior to the home opener, we will be again giving away a pair of seats to see the Alouettes play the Saskatchewan Roughriders in the home opener. So stay tuned.
Yes, absolutely. If you've been waiting for that opportunity to go and see the Alouettes, first of all, how dare you? But second of all, if you want to come check out the Alouettes live at Percival Molson Stadium, no better way than do so than get your name in the contest, win those flight crew seats. I tell you what, folks, free Alouettes football on us. Mm-hmm. I don't think it gets much better than that.
Yeah, on us, along with our presenting sponsor, SportBuff. So, stamps, as we mentioned before, the Owls have opened the season 4 times in Calgary to start the season. The Alouettes are currently depending on where you look, from anything from Bet Regal at a 3.5 to 5 times at a 4-point underdog. Over under is at a nice clip of 47.5. What are your thoughts, buddy? I mean, Calgary is Calgary when it comes to Coach Huff, Bo Levi. It's
Dave Dickinson.
Yeah, exactly. What do the Alouettes need to do to go into this game in Calgary tomorrow night at 9 p.m. TSN, RDS, or on the radio? What do they need to do in order to win this game?
They just got to walk in and punch Calgary in the mouth, which is easier said than done because Calgary has looked very dominant in the preseason. And I know preseason doesn't count, but at the same time, like as I've said before, people love to write off Calgary and are eagerly awaiting the day when Calgary all of a sudden starts to suck. And it just almost never seems to come. I mean, this team, if they're not at the top of the division, they're very close. They're in the conversation. As far as I'm concerned, like this has always been the team to beat. Like this has always been a standard bearer team. I think Winnipeg has kind of taken over the top spot when it comes to that, but Calgary is always in the conversation. So if you can walk into Calgary, as you've done in the past, and play these guys hard, you could walk away with a win. The big key, though, is a lot of people are looking at Bo Levi Mitchell. And again, a lot of people are doubting him. Like he has not played well over the past couple of years. Like he's shown some chinks in the armor after, as I've said, I've considered him and Michael Riley, to be amongst the top tier quarterbacks in this league. Well, Riley's retired now, and Bo Levi, past couple seasons, hasn't quite played like a top tier quarterback due to injury, due to any number of things, but he just hasn't looked himself. In which case, the Alouettes or the Stampeders would be leaning heavily on Jake Meyer, who Alouettes fans remember last year in that thrilling game in Calgary where the Alouettes lost
by a yard.
Yeah.
Gino will remember, I'm sure. Gino will remember very well.
And Vernon too, because he did not play his best game, but still managed to engineer a comeback and still managed to produce that exciting football that we've come to expect from VA and the Alouettes. But I think, honestly, if Montreal is going to come away with a W on this one, they've got to set the tone right away. They've got to control the pace of this match immediately. And this defense, for example, they've got to get in Bo Levi's face. They got to make him uncomfortable. Like he's going to be eager to prove that he's not washed up. He's not dinged up or anything like that. Like I definitely see Bo Levi trying to maybe even overcompensate a little bit for himself. And if
he's got a lot to prove too, though. I mean, considering what he's come off of last year, he's got a lot to prove.
Yeah, and again, there's a lot of rumblings that he may have even been traded based on the fact that Jake Mayer was playing some pretty outstanding football in his absence. So, I mean, as I said, like, as far as the quarterback position goes, like the Stampeders always seem to have an ace in the hole. They always seem to have that plan B that works extremely well. Before they had Nick Arbuckle, then Jake Mayer came along, and now a lot of people are thinking like, okay, like if Bo Levi starts to falter, then okay, we got a plan B and a very good plan B in Jake Mayer. But at the same time, for all intents and purposes, this is still Bo Levi Mitchell's team. So Montreal really has to get in there and punch him in the mouth right away, and punch him in the mouth first and often, and really rattle him, because as he falls, so will the Stampeders fall. As far as I'm concerned, like that's what they're going to do, and Montreal just has to, like, offensively, they just have to click on all cylinders. Like you've got the talent, you've got Stanback, you've got Answe running the rock. I mean, like you pretty much got to force feed the football down Calgary's throat. You got to push them and push them and push them, and you've got to score points. You cannot leave points on the board, as far as I'm concerned. Like field goals are not going to cut it against this football team. Like, Vernon has to find a way to get everybody open and take as many shots as possible, and just play the kind of game that we expect him to. Like no making mistakes, no overthinking throws. Just do the damn thing. Like that's really what Vernon has to do. Like just keep it simple. Make your plays, make your reads like you're supposed to. And again, I think this is also a winnable football game. This is going to be a tough game. It's going to be a very competitive game, but Montreal has proven that they can go into Calgary and win. And there's no reason to think that they couldn't do it again this year.
Yeah. As I said earlier in the thing, I had 200 stuck in my head. If it is the case where Stanback does go off for 200, I see the Owls winning this game. I think it just needs to be a balanced attack. VA needs to be sharp. Stanback needs to show that he is okay and good to go. It is going to be a tough game. I mean, look at the history of the Alouettes. They've only won one game in Calgary over the past, multiple years?
Almost a decade, yeah.
Yeah, they're 1-9. They're 1-9 over their last 10.
Yep. The one thing I am looking forward to, the potential. Well, there's two things I'm actually looking forward to now that I think about it. The return of Hergy Mayala, former Calgary Stampeder.
Yes.
So he's going to want to show up and show out. He wants to remind them of what they used to have in their lineup. But also too, Tyson Philpott could very well be playing against his twin brother Jalen Philpott.
It's very possible.
I mean that could be fun. Let's not forget too that Tyson Philpott also is a former member of the Calgary Dinos, so he knows McMahon Stadium very well.
True.
So I mean, he knows how that turf is. He knows what it's like to play on that field. So I don't think the moment's going to be too big for him either. So don't be surprised if somehow VA gets him into the mix and gets him wide open out of nowhere, because all he did, Tyson Philpott, was catch touchdowns for the Dinos.
All right,
so,
and by the way, just as you're mentioning, Jalen Philpott is on the one game.
Okay. Well, forget that. I'm sure most of what I said could be salvaged, but yes, I expect I expect Tyson Philpott to want to perform and show up for his former Calgary fans that now will have to watch him in blue and red.
Mm-hmm.
So those are two interesting aspects that I'd like to see played out tomorrow. I'd like to see if Hergy can, kind of show up his former running buddies, and if Tyson Philpott can make a name for himself early on in the season, as helping to score some touchdowns for the Alouettes. I'm all for that as well. I mean, there's a lot of neat little side stories to this particular matchup, and I'm looking forward to each and every one of them.
Yep, I agree with you, dude. It should be fun. It should be fun. That's the thing. Just remember, it's multiple ways you can watch the game tomorrow night. Also, as a quick side note, for those of you who may have not seen it, the Alouettes this Sunday, the 12th, will be hosting not only a practice for fans, but also what are they calling it? Exchange your VA jersey day.
A jersey swap.
Yeah, jersey swap from a number 8 jersey to a number 3 jersey. Again, that will be happening starting at 11 a.m. this Sunday at Olympic Stadium. So if you don't know where their practice facility is, it's behind the Big O. Trying to give some more details.
It's basically between Stade Saputo and the Olympic Stadium.
There you go.
There's a small field. Well, it's not really a small field because it's like standard size, but there's a field in between the two stadiums, if you will. That's where the Alouettes will be practicing. Yeah. So exactly. The public's welcome. It's open to the public. Come one, come all. Come check it out. If you've got that number 8 VA jersey, today or that day is your opportunity to get switched to get that number 3 that should have never left VA's property. But that's in the past. We're past that now. We'll look into the future. Make sure you get that new swag.
Exactly.
Looking at you, Tim, because I know you got the...
I got mine. I'll be getting it changed.
There you go.
I'll be getting it changed.
There you go, folks.
Yep. So stay tuned for our next show where we talk about everything Alouettes and recapping the opener versus the Calgary Stampeders. If you happen to be going to the event on Sunday, hey, come say hi to us. We'll be there. We're more than happy to meet all of our fans because without you, we'd be talking to ourselves. So
pretty much. And once again, folks, please don't forget, check out the Markcast on Thursday evening. Yes. Make sure you check us out. Like I said, we're really excited to be a part of that. Really excited to talk Alouettes football, whether it's on here or on other platforms. We're just excited to be able to share our thoughts, share our opinions on what's going on here in Montreal. And just think about it, Tim. Finally, Canadian football regular season is going to be underway, and we're kicking things off.
That's right. Who would have thought, baby? Who would have thought? Should be fun. So we'll speak to you guys next week. So for everybody here at the Alouettes Flight Deck, for Cliffy D, I'm Tim Capper. We're on Final Approach.